The story begins in the Eastern continent, where barbarian forces clash with the defending soldiers of the Eldarin Kingdom. On the bloody battlefield, heads are seen flying as the powerful barbarians gain the upper hand and tear through the Eldarin forces like paper. Yet the captain of the Eldarin troops, Seraphina, refuses to abandon her comrades. She rallies her troops to keep fighting and carve out a path for retreat. Even as Seraphina cuts down some barbarian soldiers, she sees that their side has taken so many casualties that there is virtually no chance of making it out alive. Suddenly, a new monster appears from the barbarian side. Vyor, a joint barbarian elite, tears through Eldarin soldiers and lands right in front of Seraphina, his bloody blade raised high. Vyor easily recognizes Seraphina as a seasoned captain among the common soldiers and challenges her to a one-on-one fight. Knowing that no one else can stand against this monster's huge blade, Seraphina agrees to the fight, hoping to buy some time for her men to escape. She leaps high into the air and plunges down on Vyor, who casually parries her attack while standing still. Then he swings at Seraphina with immense power, sending her flying to the side. Seraphina lands on her feet, rebounds, and launches a second attack on Vyor, and the two begin trading blows in a heated exchange. Although Seraphina impressively keeps up with Vyor's strength, his overwhelming power keeps forcing her back. Seeing no other choice, she uses her ultimate technique, which casts a magic enhancement on her sword. Using every last bit of her remaining strength, she charges forward and meets Vyor's final strike head-on. As the two swords meet, one blade shatters and goes flying into the ground. The Eldarin soldiers stand stunned, watching their captain stand in defeat, holding a broken sword. Seraphina collapses to her knees and accepts defeat, while Vyor sincerely praises her for holding her own against him for so long. Seraphina then asks him to kill her like a warrior, but Vyor refuses to take her life. Instead, he flashes a sinister green light and promises that he will take her alive and put her body to good use. After this ominous warning, Seraphina loses consciousness and wakes up in a dark, dingy prison cell, wearing dirty rags and bound in heavy shackles. Shocked, she looks around and slowly gathers her bearings. Then it finally comes back to her: she was defeated by the barbarians and is now their captive. The moment she recalls Vyor's final warning, Seraphina is terrified, wondering what kind of torture the barbarians will inflict on her. She wonders whether they will make her a slave or subject her to immense pain for their entertainment. Finally, the scariest thought flashes through her mind. She wonders whether Vyor wants to use her as a woman. Since Seraphina is still an unmarried young noblewoman, the thought of a brutish barbarian defiling her pure body sends her into serious anxiety. Then Seraphina realizes that her poor comrades were still surrounded by barbarians when she was knocked out. She thinks they must have all been slaughtered or captured just like her. A crushing rush of despair washes over her. Most of all, she worries about the common people of her kingdom, because without the eastern lands, their crops will continue to die and there will be no land left to plant. All these regrets bring tears to the eyes of the experienced captain, but suddenly she hears a voice from behind her. Seraphina sees a female servant named Sarsi arriving with water. Seraphina looks Sarsi over carefully and notices pliers and tools on her belt, thinking she has come to torture her for information. However, Sarsi says nothing about torture and instead reveals that she has come to prepare Seraphina as King Vyor's perfect trophy. She chains Seraphina to the wall so she cannot move, and the knight captain braces herself for brutal torture. Meanwhile, outside the dungeon, Vyor thinks about meeting Seraphina, his eyes gleaming with anticipation. Back in the prison cell, Seraphina is now nude while Sarsi washes her body with a wet cloth. When the cleaning is finished, Seraphina asks Sarsi why a slave is going through all this ceremony for her. Sarsi explains that Seraphina's body was filthy from battle, so she was simply cleaning her. Sarsi then casually comments that she is surprised by Seraphina's appearance, that this is the same woman who fought the master for so long. Sarsi explains that she had expected Seraphina to be more muscular, since she was able to hold her own against Vyor, but instead she is simply a feminine girl. Hearing this bruises Seraphina's ego, because she thinks that as a knight, she doesn't have time to look girly or cute. Sarsi understands her emotions, but reveals that Vyor really likes Seraphina's looks. This statement confuses Seraphina even more, but Sarsi refuses to explain further. Instead, she quietly hints that Seraphina will never be able to leave barbarian territory, and says this while holding a sharp knife in her hand. Seraphina thinks her end has finally come and desperately struggles against her restraints, hoping for a miracle. As Sarsi approaches with the sharp knife and cold metal pliers, Seraphina finally gives up and closes her eyes. However, for some reason, Sarsi only cuts the restraints, trims Seraphina's fingernails, and puts a dress on her body. When Seraphina opens her eyes, she sees strangely decent clothing and realizes the dress is scented with perfume. She wonders why the barbarians are giving their prisoner a scented robe, and whether they are preparing her for some kind of sacrificial ritual. Before she can even ask Sarsi, a loud roar comes from above the dungeon. Sarsi confirms that Vyor has arrived, and soon the massive Barbarian King lumbers into Seraphina's prison cell. Upon entering the cell, Vyor formally introduces himself as the son of the barbarian great chief, the Old One. Meanwhile, Seraphina observes his massive body and golden eyes and realizes he cannot be a human being. She recalls her grandfather's stories about expeditions against barbarian soldiers. Even back then, powerful brutes easily overwhelmed human forces and ripped out hearts for rituals. She thinks she is now about to face that same fate. Seraphina tells Vyor she is not afraid of anyone and dares him to do whatever he is going to do. This confuses Vyor because he has no plans of sacrificing her. He finally explains that the real reason he captured her was to make her his bride. These few words turn Seraphina's world completely upside down, and all her anxiety comes flooding to her face as a beet-red blush. At first she is so shocked she asks whether this is a prank. When Vyor says he truly wants to marry her, Seraphina completely loses her mind. She asks why he would marry an enemy. Vyor explains that the barbarian race has no problem falling in love with an enemy, then goes into a fiery passion and recalls the traditions of his proud ancestors. From the dawn of the barbarian race, the strongest kings have always married female knights to honor the passion of the sword. Despite this explanation, Seraphina still refuses to become his wife. The sneaky barbarian reminds her that she herself said, "Do whatever you want," so Seraphina finds herself trapped in her own words. Then Vyor explains that he is not marrying her just for cultural tradition. He recalls the fight on the battlefield, where he felt the sincerity of the passion in Seraphina's sword. Seeing such a powerful woman, he immediately fell in love and decided he would marry her, no matter what. Hearing Vyor's sincere confession, Seraphina becomes flustered and cannot respond, so she turns around to leave the room. As he leaves, Vyor promises that he will not force her against her will, so she can carefully consider her decision. When he finally leaves the cell, the shell-shocked knight wonders what is going to happen next in this crazy dungeon while awaiting marriage. As she waits, Seraphina recalls a memory from years ago. Back then, her brother Sidious had notified her that she had been named captain of the expedition to the barbarian lands. Seraphina agrees and goes to attend to her duties, but Sidious stops her and gives her an invitation to a noble banquet. She is confused and wonders what her brother wants. Sidious reminds her that she is still a noble lady and must uphold her reputation. Seeing her brother's intense stare, Seraphina straightens up and accepts the invitation. Later, dressed in pretty clothes, she arrives at the banquet at Count Ilhol's mansion. Seeing Seraphina in non-military clothing, the nobles begin making comments about her profession. In hushed whispers, the venomous elites make horrible remarks about Seraphina's appearance, wondering whether a delicate-looking lady is fit to lead seasoned warriors, although they knew her real strength. The nobles felt it was a waste for a woman to be so strong. Overwhelmed by the negative comments, Seraphina steps out onto the balcony for fresh air. Then some young ladies come outside and invite her to join them instead of sulking alone. The four of them sit together, and the young ladies ask Seraphina whether she is scared of her dreadful job. Having heard stories of monsters and dragons, the ladies wonder whether Seraphina will be okay in such dangerous situations. Sera smiles and explains that dragons are simply imaginary creatures, but the ladies remind her that she still has to face the barbarians. Knowing the tales of brutal barbarians and the horrible treatment of female knights, the ladies tell her to stay home and avoid a brutal end. However, Seraphina slams her hands on the table, silencing everyone. Sera confidently declares that the kingdom has been trying to conquer the eastern lands from day one. In her mind, only by conquering the east can the kingdom gain the resources to feed its people, and that is why she was ready to fight the barbarians. Still, the young ladies remind her that the prestigious Princess Wisteria, who had been a role model, also went up against the barbarians and went missing. All the ladies advise her to stay home and marry a suitable husband, but Sera is tired of the negative attitudes and leaves the gathering. Later, riding home in a carriage, she feels disgusted watching the nobles who eat luxurious meals while the common people starve in the streets. Along the way, she sees a poor man being attacked by 3 people. The boys were starving peasants who were robbing to survive. Yet Sera jumps in to protect the poor man and warns the robbers to back off. Seeing no way out, the boys attack with farming tools, but Sera easily defeats them. The boys think their lives are about to end, but suddenly Sera takes pity and gives them her precious necklace. The shocked boys thank her for the precious gift and promise they will never hurt anyone again. As they leave, Sera's heart clenches with pain seeing the condition of the people. Internally, she promises that she will return victorious from the east and bring peace to the kingdom. A few days later, before leaving for the expedition, Sera pays her respects to the missing Princess Wisteria. Suddenly, her brother pops up from behind, furious that she didn't find a husband at the banquet. Once again, Seraphina reminds Sidious that she is going to fight for the kingdom, but the proud prince firmly states that women cannot fight on the front lines and angrily shouts her name. Suddenly, the prince's voice shifts into Vyor's voice. Vyor advances and stretches out his hand, determined to make her his wife no matter what. The moment the barbarian grabs her, Seraphina's nightmare finally ends and she wakes up in a cold sweat. Then a powerful snore comes from nearby, and she notices that Vyor is sleeping right next to her. In an instant, seeing Vyor's powerful body, Seraphina comes to her senses, draws a cold breath, and is terrified about how she will handle being his wife. After a few moments, Sera collects her scattered thoughts. She screams at Vyor, asking why he is with her, but he explains that she is currently in his bedroom. Hearing this, Sara becomes even more outraged and asks why Vyor is naked and with her. He ignores the question and instead acts relieved that she is feeling fine after last night. Images and words grow in Sara's mind, and she thinks the brutish barbarian forced himself on her. Unable to bear the affront to her dignity, Sera tells Vyor to put her out of her misery. Vyor stops and asks why she wants to die instead of being killed. Sera points out that barbarians have no idea about the concept of a woman's honor in the kingdom, so they have no right to judge her feelings. She also reminds him that she was defeated in battle, which has dealt a huge blow to a knight's honor. Vyor understands her frustration, but still thinks it does not justify ending her life. Instead, he encourages her to move on and appreciate the blessings of life. As the two are arguing, Sasi enters the room with clothes for Vyor. She realizes that Sara is misunderstanding the situation and explains that the sleeping drug was overdosed. Vyor had not expected the drug to be so strong, so he had her rest in his bedroom while he watched over her worried. Finally, Sera realizes that Vyor had simply cared for her and had not compromised her chastity while she was unconscious. Still, she gets mad that he created a misunderstanding. Vyor glosses over her anger and focuses on breakfast. He changes clothes and goes to eat, telling Sera to come out whenever she is ready. After Vyor leaves the room, Sera collapses to the floor, overwhelmed by all her emotions. She feels ashamed that, as a proud knight, she is relying on her worst enemies for food and shelter, and she remembers her grandfather's teachings. Her grandfather had trained his granddaughter, yet had felt bad that she was born a woman. Like Sidious, he had told her to find happiness by marrying a husband. After hearing such demoralizing words, Sera realizes that Vyor is the only person who has ever appreciated her knighthood and found it attractive. Still, her ego refuses to accept his love, and instead she focuses on breakfast. As a prisoner of war, Sera wonders whether wherever Vyor will take her for breakfast will be meant to humiliate her. However, when she actually goes outside, her jaw drops at the sight before her. Seeing a massive joint slab of roasted fatty meat, her mouth starts watering because her impoverished nation could never afford such meat. Vyor thinks Sera will be hungry, so he gives her 10 pounds of meat, thinking it is a normal size for human knights. In reality, the chunk of meat is bigger than Sera's torso, more than she eats in an entire year. Sera thinks Vyor is bribing her with the delicious feast to get her to accept him. So she swears that she would rather die than accept his gift. Unfortunately, her stomach growls in protest. Embarrassed, she starts begging for death again. Vyor is confused once more about why she seeks death over a minor inconvenience. He reminds her that her stomach is growling because it is good, meaning her body wants to live. Finally, he tells her to stop overthinking and just accept the meal. Meanwhile, Sasi comes to Sera's side and explains that Vyor is acting nonchalant, but actually personally hunted and brought this meat specifically for her. She reminds her that Vyor is a noble even among barbarians, so refusing his kind gift would be bad etiquette. Sera takes the bait and accepts the gift. When she finally takes a bite, the juicy meat instantly captures her heart. Sera literally starts crying because she has never eaten such tender meat. Vyor notices just how much she is enjoying it. The moment he notices, she perks up and acts like the food is just okay. Then reluctantly, she forgives Vyor for the misunderstanding of the morning. After that, Sera becomes curious about the creature the meat came from. Vyor explains that the creature has already been butchered and the men are cleaning up the hide outside. Sera peers out the window, thinking it will be some juicy cattle. Instead, she gets the sight of a dragon carcass. She wonders if these are the fire-breathing dragons from legends. Vyor chuckles and explains that fire-breathing dragons do exist, but this one was just an herbivore. He then notices that Sera has polished off the meat. Despite being shocked by the sauce, Sera finishes eating. After the meal, Vyor asks her to come outside with him. Sera still doesn't trust him, so she hesitates about going out. Vyor thinks she is scared of the beasts of a foreign land. Getting angry at the implication, she accepts the challenge. Sera gets ready and warns Vyor that she doesn't trust him. He accepts the warning but still thinks she will love the scenery outside. The moment Sera steps out of the house, she is stunned by a peaceful meadow teeming with thriving wildlife. Vyor notices her surprise and explains that the battlefield was a wasteland, but the rest of the barbarian lands are full of life. Then Vyor starts walking to show her the other side. Sera mentally prepares herself for more surprises. Walking through the forest, Sera curiously observes the wildlife. She looks up and sees a dragon flying in the sky. Vyor explains that it is simply a normal animal in their lands. Although dragons are difficult to hunt, they do not bother the barbarians as long as they don't venture into their lairs. Sera is annoyed that he is treating terrifying beasts so casually, but he reminds her that she already ate one for breakfast. An embarrassed Sera goes silent and continues walking. Soon, a soft humming sound is heard in the distance, and she wonders what it is. As they get closer, she is shocked to see a pristine, crystal-clear waterfall. Sera blurts out that she has never seen one before. Vyor wonders aloud whether there are no waterfalls in the kingdom. Sera gets defensive and starts to deny it, but then remembers that the Eldarin Kingdom truly has no such natural sights. Vyor feels bad and reassures her that he just wanted to show her a beautiful waterfall. He is not bragging about the land's resources. Then suddenly he takes off his shirt and tells Sera to do the same. Shocked, she asks why. Vyor says they should get in the water together. With a perverted mind, Sera starts picturing illegal activities, but Vyor explains that he simply wants to take a bath. Still, she reminds him that a man and woman bathing together is completely unacceptable. Vyor says barbarian culture does not share that view, so being together makes no difference. Sarsi comes close to Sera and reminds her that she hasn't bathed since the bloody fight. She points out that if she doesn't bathe soon, her grimy body will stink up the whole place. Finally, Sera agrees to the bath but sends Vyor somewhere else so he can't see her. Sarsi accompanies Sera for the bath, so Sera thinks she is keeping an eye on her. However, Sarsi explains that she is actually watching for safety. Sera feels confused, but suddenly a massive snapping turtle pops out of nowhere. Terrified, she clings to a rock, and Sarsi says there are other weird creatures here that might scare her, but still wonders why Sera is so scared since they are peaceful animals. Suddenly, Sera sees a bunch of eldritch monstrosities that look like something out of horror stories, and she runs away in terror from the waterfall. Sarsi feels worried but doesn't chase her when she realizes where Sera is headed. Meanwhile, Sera panics and stops, then realizes she left her clothes at the waterfall. Suddenly, a bird cries out loudly, breaking her train of thought. Then Sera prepares to head back to get her clothes. However, a strange man calls out, which makes her think the time has finally come to lose her innocence. As the strange barbarian man approaches, she instinctively backs off and tells him to stay away. He doesn't listen and comes closer. Sera finally catches a glimpse of his handsome face. She starts comparing the handsome stranger to the men back in the kingdom, but then remembers she is naked in a towel. Sera tells the man to stay back, but he stands in place. Instead, noticing her pathetic appearance, he figures out that she must have run away from the bath, scared. Thankfully, the young man does not mock her for being scared. He reveals that his mother was also a woman from the West, so she would get scared in the bath just like Sera. His mother used to tell stories about the kingdom, a land that lacked wildlife and nature, exactly like Sera's homeland. Lost in her thoughts, the surprised Sera wonders whether the barbarian's mother had been one of the missing female knights captured during her grandfather's expedition. While she is lost in thought, the young man drapes his own clothes around her. Then he says to come back with him and find her clothes. Sera is surprised that a barbarian can also be a gentleman, and wonders whether Vyor is a special, deranged case. Meanwhile, the man notices her red face and comes close to check for a fever. Having been raised as a noble, Sera becomes completely flustered by the touch. The man thinks the fever is too intense for her to make it down the mountain herself. He scoops her up and carries her in his arms down the slope. Soon, Sarsi finds the two of them standing together and wonders how Master Vyor so easily tamed Sera. Hearing the name, Sera realizes the young man holding her is none other than Vyor, with a shaved beard. He smiles, pleased at her shocked and green-faced reaction. Enraged by the deception, Sera slaps Vyor, who happily praises her for producing so much more reaction. Walking back home, Sarsi wonders whether Vyor will be okay. Sera warns him that if she were a sword, she would challenge him to a duel. Then she blames him for taking her to a dangerous area where she panicked. However, Sarsi explains that the wildlife is peaceful because Vyor personally patrols the area to keep dangerous beasts away. Vyor also explains that he bathed alone because Sera wanted privacy. Otherwise, he would have been there to protect her. Sera wonders whether creatures like dragons are dangerous enough to guard against. Vyor explains that dragons are strong but usually cowardly and do not provoke on their own. However, Sarsi points out that only Vyor is strong enough to consider dragons cowards. He turns towards Sera, pleased at seeing a new side of her. Embarrassed by the attention, Sera forgives him for the beautiful scenery as a thank you and leaves the area blushing. Walking back home, she thinks that being Vyor's wife would not be too bad, since without his beard he is so handsome. Unfortunately, just a few days later, she sees him again with his full beard back, and his looks return to how they were before. A few days later, Seraphina is impatiently listening as Vyor invites her to a meeting with his clan members. He shows her the meeting venue, which is the oldest and largest settlement of the barbarian race, a lakeside village. Seraphina takes note of the village's location, but then wonders why Vyor is leaking potential military intelligence. She wonders whether he is underestimating her, and reminds him that she could escape to her homeland at any time and give this information to her military. Vyor bursts out laughing at this warning. He reminds her that just a few days ago she was love-struck by his shaved face, so she would not want to harm him now. He also thinks that he will easily make her his wife, so he is not worried that she will leak any sensitive information. The two are constantly arguing when Sarsi notes that they are already behaving like a married couple. Some time later, they all arrive at the meeting spot, where Seraphina finds herself surrounded by over 100 intimidating men. Every seasoned barbarian, weapons clenched in their teeth, is telling Vyor to give them a chance to blood test themselves against the female captain. Seraphina thinks her time has come, since the barbarians want revenge for their defeated comrades. However, Vyor tells the barbarians to stand back and asks them to give Seraphina a proper welcome into their tribe. At the leader's command, all the hot-blooded barbarians calm down and welcome Seraphina. Seeing their cheerful faces, Seraphina wonders why they are all gathered here if they don't want to kill her. Vyor explains that they just came to welcome her and are hopping for a sparring match with her. This confuses her even more, and she asks why no barbarian wants revenge. To answer this, Vyor himself asks the barbarians whether any of them has any hatred towards Seraphina. They all solemnly declare that they bear her no ill will, and they line up in a warrior formation to welcome her into the tribe. Seraphina still doesn't trust the barbarians and thinks they are only following their leader's orders. Still, she begins walking in the formation with Vyor and Sarsi. As they walk, suddenly one barbarian in the back starts crying and breaks the formation. Inspired by Seraphina's bravery, he praises her outstanding martial arts on the battlefield. Seraphina is completely speechless as more barbarians join in and begin complimenting both her beauty and her skills. She is completely overwhelmed being praised by her enemies, but Vyor reminds her that all barbarians respect strength, no matter whose it is. Amazed, she walks with him deeper into the village. As they walk, she sees a peaceful community engaged in animal processing. Suddenly, Vyor stops in front of a house where water is being boiled. He tells Sarsi and Seraphina that they will be staying at this house while he handles the meeting with the elders. He then announces his presence to the house's residents. Soon, a kind woman comes out of the house and asks what Vyor wants. He introduces Seraphina as his wife and asks the woman to look after Seraphina while he is away. The amazed woman immediately becomes charmed by Seraphina's attractive beauty and pulls her inside, without even listening to the poor girl's protests. Once inside, the woman apologizes for being so forceful, but Seraphina forgives her. Then the woman calls her son guard and asks him to fetch some medicinal herbs. When the little boy struggles to search through a large box for something, his mother lifts the cover and helps him. Soon he pulls out an herb pouch, and the woman drops it into the boiling water to make tea. Seraphina wonders whether herbal tea is normal for barbarians. The woman nods yes. Then the woman sitting next to her says they need more boiled water to make tea for everyone. She sends her children to fetch more firewood. Seraphina is impressed that even the young barbarian children are already being trained to be so strong and independent. Their mother doesn't make much of it and says they are just copying their elders. When the tea is ready, Seraphina takes a sip. She admits that the tea is better than she expected, and the herbal taste is refreshing her body. Sarsi says it tastes good because of the herbs, as they came from a special source. When Seraphina finishes her cup, she eagerly asks for another. After that, she realizes that the two mothers living in the house are not related to each other. She wonders whether they are the only people living in this house, and asks whether their husbands are working outside in the military. But the woman surprises her by telling her that both of them are widows. She explains that their husbands lost their lives in the battle against the West. Seraphina feels guilty about her people's actions. Although she knows that the Western army fought to gain resources for her people, she still thinks they destroyed innocent lives. She apologizes to both mothers on behalf of her army, thinking they have every right to be angry at her. But the barbarian woman is confused because she thinks Seraphina is seeking revenge. Seraphina reminds her that her people killed their husbands and she herself may have done so. Hearing this, the women finally fall silent. Then the oldest among them speaks. Although she is sad that her youngest son never got to see his father's face, she considers it a blessing that he was present at his father's funeral. Since then, she has been grateful for her son and raised him with love and care. She also explains that even if there had been no war, the barbarian men's lives would have been spent on other risky adventures, like fighting monsters in caves or dragon hunting. Even if they hadn't lost their lives, the barbarian warriors might have been permanently disabled. So she thinks that for their women, losing a husband is often normal. Hearing this, Seraphina is completely stunned and wonders whether all barbarians take someone's death this casually. Suddenly, an alarm bell rings throughout the village, as the guard towers detect an incoming attack. From inside the house, she understands what is happening and warns everyone that they are under attack. Before anyone can react, a flying creature crashes into the house from above. When the smoke clears, Seraphina finds herself staring down a large, beak-faced winged dragon. Sarsi explains that this is called a smoke-seeker dragon, attracted to smoke from burning wood. Seraphina understands that this creature is attacking because of their tea party. But Sarsi explains that dragons don't usually invade the village because they know the warriors will kill them. Unfortunately, there is no time to investigate further, because the guard boy starts crying in his mother's arms out of fear of the dragon. The boy's crying attracts the dragon's attention, so Seraphina prepares to fight. Sarsi tells Seraphina to flee the village because she is Vyor's precious wife, but Seraphina firmly refuses. She gets angry at Sarsi for treating other people's lives as expendable and focusing on just one person. She then reminds her that she is not some fragile princess who needs to be shielded. With the pride of an elder and knight captain, Seraphina picks up a pair of hot tongs and confronts the dragon. As the creature roars at her, she uses the tongs like a baseball bat and shoves it back. Sarsi is shocked and warns that she cannot defeat a dragon with such a simple cooking tool. However, Seraphina is done arguing and tells Sarsi to just run. She also notes that the dragon's strikes are not as powerful as Vyor's sword, so she is confident she can defeat it. She is determined to protect the people behind her. Seraphina leaps behind the dragon's head and drives the tongs straight into its eye while Sarsi watches. Seraphina orders her to run and stop wasting time. Finally, Sarsi understands that she is putting Seraphina's life in danger, so she leaves the house. After Sarsi leaves, Seraphina taunts the dragon to face her. Meanwhile, in another part of the village, barbarian warriors manage to restrain another dragon. After restraining the creature, Vyor charges it and cuts its neck. Then he asks his soldiers how many more dragons are invading the village. A soldier tells him there are 3 more remaining. Vyor tells him to find any villagers who have not yet been evacuated. The soldier agrees. Vyor thinks Seraphina will be safe because Sarsi must have already helped her escape. Having addressed his concerns, he rallies the barbarians to cover the rest of the village and takes down 2 more dragons. After defeating both, Vyor wonders where the last one is. Suddenly, Sarsi comes running toward him without Seraphina. She tells Vyor that a dragon attacked the house where they were staying, and before she can finish her sentence, Vyor flies past her. Near the house, Seraphina is running from the dragon. She realizes that the flying creature is faster than her in an open space. Unable to escape, she turns around and prepares to make her last stand. However, the dragon is also tired from the long battle. Still, it lunges at Seraphina at blinding speed. This time, its sharp beak breaks the tongs, and Seraphina has nothing left to defend herself. At last, she thinks that, having shown mercy to her helpless enemies, she can now die with honor as a knight. Just as the dragon closes in to deliver the final blow, Seraphina closes her eyes and doesn't even try to struggle. But right at the moment she is preparing for death, Vyor comes running from behind her and shouts to cover her ears. Shocked, Seraphina does so, and suddenly Vyor roars at the dragon with full force. His resonating voice bursts the poor creature's eardrums, and Vyor seizes the moment to cut it down. Seraphina is stunned watching the dragon fall before her. Vyor apologizes for being late, then he sincerely thanks her for risking her own life to save the people precious to him. Finally, Vyor expresses relief that she is okay. His voice carries genuine concern, and hearing it causes tears to stream down Seraphina's face. In this moment, she is confused about why she is crying, but the tears keep flowing. Vyor silently smiles down at her and then carries her back into the village, since she is in no condition to walk. The moment Sarsi sees her coming back, she cries out in joy. Seraphina lets Vyor treat her like a princess. *subscribe so you don't miss the next part, and watch the next video.